This recipe is for Glamorgan sausages, which is a traditional Welsh recipe, and even though they're called sausages, there's no meat in them. The main bulk is breadcrumbs made from fresh bread. So I've got a bread roll. I'm making half the amount, so if you're making the full recipe amount, 2 of these bread rolls weighs about 140 grams. I've got the same weight of cheese, so half now, and that's 70 grams of grated cheese. I've got an egg, which I'm going to beat, and as I'm doing half, I might not need it all. I've got 1 smallish leek, so if you're doing the full amount, you can use 2 or you can use a bigger one. A small clove of garlic, and in my little dish I've got salt, pepper, some mustard powder and some dried parsley, because I didn't have fresh parsley. If you've got fresh, you just chop up a handful and mix that in. The first thing I'm going to do is to prepare the leek. Now it's already trimmed coming from the shop, but those ends get a bit dry. I'm just going to take a little bit off, and then I'm going to use the knife and split it down, and I'm going to do that again. So just turn it 90 degrees. If it's quartered, that means you just get smaller pieces. Now in between the layers with leeks, you very often get earth. So I'm now going to take this and run it under the cold tap and really turn it round. You can see there's quite a lot in there. Once it's washed off, this leek will be fine. So once you wash the leek, just have a quick check, looking in all the layers, check there's no earth or dirt or grit in there. And if you're not sure, you can always put it in a colander after it's chopped and then give it another run under the cold tap. So I'm going to bunch my leek up into a tight roll with my left hand, and then I'm going to use the knife and cut nice thin slices, which should then fall into little pieces because we've already split it. These are going to be fried before they go in with the other ingredients. So as soon as this is prepped, I'm going to melt a little bit of butter, or you could use oil or spray oil, in a small frying pan or saucepan, whatever you've got. And I'm going to fry these until they're nice and soft to take away the crunch. You want a little bit of colour, but it's mainly to soften them. So just a small amount of butter in the pan. I'm going to melt that and get it nice and hot before the leeks go in. So the butter's melted. I'm going to put the leeks in. When they've cooked for a few minutes, and then I'm going to add in the crushed garlic. So I don't want these to cook too quickly. I don't want them brown and crispy. So they probably take about 5 minutes just to soften down nicely. While the leeks are frying, I'm going to break up the bread because it's not going to fit in the blender in one big lump. Now if you haven't got a blender, you can just rough it up on the rough side of the grater, so that would be this side, and that would sort of break it up into crumbs. It just takes a bit longer. Or to be honest, with this recipe you can just sort of break it up, but that will not really handle the crust. So if you've got a blender or a food processor, then obviously that's the best thing to use. So break it up into rough pieces. I probably won't put it all in one go. It won't mix if you have it overfilled. So there's the breadcrumbs, and I put them into a mixing bowl. The next thing I'm going to do is get my leeks that are now cooked. You can leave them go cold, but it's not really going to harm. They're quite warm going in. I'm going to give them a mix through, and then I'm going to start adding my seasonings, my salt and pepper, mustard and parsley, and I'm now going to put the cheese. So I'll mix that through as well. Doesn't really matter what you use to mix. I'm going to use a fork to do the next step because my spatula is a bit bendy. So just mix it thoroughly, make sure that the cheese is combined throughout. Otherwise you'll have some that just taste of bread. And the next step we're going to do is to take my beaten egg and I'm going to pour not quite all of it in and give that a good mix together. If it's a little wet, it doesn't really matter. What you could do is dust your hands in some flour to help you shape them, but once they've been chilled they really hold their shape anyway. So you've got a good mix together until it starts to come away from the side of the bowl, really thoroughly mixing, and you can see that the egg, with my eggs are quite yellow, you can see it's gone all over the mixture, so I don't need that last bit of egg. So once you've got your mixture ready, take a ball, a handful, a longer piece, depends on what you're aiming at, and you just squeeze it together, shape it into a sausage, or you can do little balls. You can treat them like a stuffing ball. They're really tasty. They're nice hot, freshly cooked, and they're also really nice cold, just as a little snack. So just shape them all, and then you'd cook them however you would normally cook sausages. So I've cooked these in my air fryer. You could be cooking them in a frying pan. You could deep fry them, but obviously it's a bit unhealthier. They work quite nicely just in a little bit of oil sprayed or drizzled in a pan and just lightly fried until they look done, because you've got no meat in there. You haven't got to worry about cooking right through to the centre and checking that it's the right colour. Basically, when they look done, they should be done. What I'm going to do now is just to leave them to chill and firm up a little bit before I fry them, and they're less likely to break and fall apart then. So here's the finished result. They're brown and crisp on the outside. They're still quite soft and melty in the middle. They'd also work cooking them in the oven, and I would do it as if you were making chicken nuggets. Put them on a tray, either greased or with a lining of non-stick paper, some baking paper. Because of the cheese, they are a little bit more likely to stick if you just put them on a tray.